Your Honor and the people of the jury, under the law, my client is presumed innocent until proven guilty. During this trial, you will see the useless allegations that have been made imposed on my client, Mr. Malcolm X. During this trial, you will hear little to no plausible evidence against my client. During this trial, you will hear the truth. The truth being that Mr. Malcolm X has not advocated violence or created any hate against any specific race. He is simply and peacefully fighting for the rights of the oppressed black man in this color-based country called the United States of America. Our presentation of the evidence found and key witnesses will prove Malcolm X innocent.
Into our will to break the peace of our nation, also known as America. We are gathered here today because Malcolm X is guilty of sedation according to previous remarks and statements he has made, which will be provided today by the prosecution. Evidence will show Malcolm advocating for violence and admitting to his deep anger and hatred towards whites, sometimes even referring to them as white rebels. I would like to define the term sedation for the jury. Sedition is conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the established order. Malcolm X's devious mindset that in order for equality we need violence is something that we must put an end to, as it cannot go on for any longer. Malcolm's deep anger is a danger to our society, as he wishes to start a rebellion against not only the established order, but against white people as well. He claims to want equality, but what can equality mean when he hates all white people? Equality is supposed to mean everyone should have the same rights / opportunities, but how does Malcolm want to achieve this when he himself wants to separate the races? Malcolm X should be charged with sedation, and with evidence we will provide the jury, the jury will do the honor of coming to a conclusion on this case.
I would like to ask you, how did you come to learn of the Nation of Islam?
Okay, so believe it or not, I once was in prison because of past behavior, but I have become a changed man since then because of the Nation of Islam. I first learned of the Nation of Islam when my brother Reginald came to me and explained to me of a man named Elijah Muhammad, and we began to exchange letters. And after I left, or while I was in prison, I learned a lot more of the Nation of Islam from Elijah, and he became one of my role models in my life. And he opened my eyes to very many problems and very many things that happened in the world. And I was Elijah's right-hand man. I did everything for him until he decided to turn my back on my life.
Can you expound on that? Why did you leave? What was the situation?
I originally left because he preached how he was God's man and how he was the awakened one and all of this. Yet he did certain things that I will not disclose in this trial behind many people's backs that came to light that he denied. And I think it's funny how I'm on trial for sedation, yet when I left the nation, he turned his back and he posted all these slander things on the media about me that were false accusations.
And those false accusations were published while you were in Africa. Can you expound on what happened there, what you did in Africa, your experience?
In Africa, I learned about the real Nation of Islam, about the real ideas of Islam, not what he was preaching. And I do not hate Elijah. He's still a great man to me. But in Africa, it really opened my eyes to the segregation issues, and I really believed in like black excellence after that, and you just see how they're like unified and all that, and that's what I was trying to bring to America. I wanted to unify black people so they could see their potential and power that they have in the world.
And how were you treated once you returned from Africa?
I was blamed for causing riots, for starting violence, yet does anyone have proof of that? No. Was anyone there with me? No. These are all false assumptions and accusations that people made purely because they were angry that I left, not because they saw anything that was true.
No further questions?
So, with that, would you say that segregation is a good idea or a bad idea?
I think segregation is a bad idea, and I know I'm saying like unifying, you know what I mean? But segregation, it just promotes that white people have more power over others. It just promotes that black people are always being demeaned, and segregation is a clear problem in our world. When you go to other countries, you don't see it as bad as in America. It's a distinguished white power, and I just want to join black people so they can finally see the potential that they have in this world and the voice that they can create.
So you're saying you want to unify black people, yet you don't believe in segregation. Can you explain that?
I just said, huh?
You heard my question.
No, I didn't say, I said I want to unify black people, but unifying black people doesn't mean like separating them from the rest of the world.
I also want to talk about the what you said during Kennedy or after Kennedy's assassination. You said chickens going home to roost, and that made you glad and never sad. You want to talk about that? Or should I elaborate more? Chickens coming home to roost means that he deserved whatever had to him, or whatever happened to him. So do you think JFK deserved to die just because his beliefs were different than yours?
I don't believe anybody deserves to die. I said that at one time. My beliefs have changed. That was then, this is now. It's a different time. And I don't believe that he did deserve to die. Just because someone has opposing views doesn't mean that they deserve to die in any way. No one does deserve to die. And that statement, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have said that, and that's my fault.
So my first question is, do you think that the information that you're provided with and the information that you sent out amongst everyone is false?
I would say that most of the media given to me was based on opinions, so it cannot be false.
But it can't be treated? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So going off of that, do you think that his portrayal of being violence is true or false?
From myself, I can say that Malcolm X does portray violence, but it's reasonable due to his past.
So you said he portrays violence. That makes you biased towards Mr. Malcolm. So would you say your publishings are biased into making Mr. Malcolm a bad person?
Like I said earlier, that some of the media is portrayed on opinion, so I'm just representative.
Of your own opinion.
What I said to the prosecution was based on my opinion.
And then may I also ask you, if he was by himself in Africa, how did you learn that he was organizing those hate rallies and he was by himself?
Well, we do not have proof that he was getting like plans to make these rallies.
So no proof meaning not true. And so there's no hate between you and Mr. X anymore, is there?
Not at all.
So can you tell me what exactly happened between the two? Like why did he leave or why did you kick him out?
He was never kicked out. I mean, we both have different views, like Malcolm himself said. We both have different views and opinions, but we both respect each other in that sense.
Would you say did you treat him and his family fairly after they left the nation? Was there any like hard feelings after?
No, never hard feelings. I mean, when two people, just because how they have a file doesn't mean that they have to like spread beef every time they see each other.
So when you said, like, when you put false things into the media about him after he left,
I never
was
put
it-
false things into the media.
and can you tell me exactly why he left?
Malcolm wanted to start his own thing, and his trip to Africa, I guess, confirmed that. So when he came back, he continued to branch out on his own.
And from what my understanding, his brother Reginald was actually kicked out of the nation for what, may I ask?
Oh, he didn't follow the nation's, he was not like fully, he didn't like follow the nation.
So he committed adultery, right?
Yeah, he committed adultery.
And what makes that any different from what you did? So why did you praise him for always sending you letters while he was in prison? Why
My
did you-
secretary informed me that he never stopped.
So would you say most of your speeches were fake and made up by your secretary?
No.
And that you never actually.
I was busy.
Busy doing what? Cheating?
Wait, okay, time out. Okay, both sides are bashing this one person.
Historical events where you can clearly explain a case of violence that directly resulted from Malcolm.
Not to my knowledge.
Can you please explain to the prosecution and the audience the difference between separation and segregation?
I believe separation is just, is mainly segregation, in my eyes, is more the laws and institutions that are separated based on color, while separation would be more just physical.
And while Malcolm was with the Nation of Islam, he was fighting for or arguing for separation, correct? Not segregation?
I believe yes, he made a large distinction of it in his autobiography.
So segregation was the problem that he was trying to get away from in America that already existed.
I think he was mainly trying to get away from the injustice versus class more than segregation, but that was another part.
So who led the Nation of Islam?
As far as I know, Elijah Muhammad.
So therefore, Malcolm was following under the orders of Elijah, correct?
He was a very prominent spokesman.
And after Malcolm made pilgrimage to the Mecca and his views were reformed and changed from Elijah's, so anytime Malcolm was supposedly inciting violence, it was under the direct orders of Elijah Muhammad, correct?
I'm not aware of the direct orders. I know it was on his behalf.
And he was a fluent follower of Elijah Muhammad, would you say?
He was a very avid follower.
No further questions.
That there was unrest between the black community because of what Malcolm had preached. And seditious libel, the definition, is through speech, not violence. So he didn't physically start the violence, but he did express his thoughts and ideas through speech, which caused the unrest, correct? So
I wouldn't call the unrest violent. I would call it more demonstration.
however, in a speech, he says there will be more violence than ever. In a speech at Park Sheraton Hotel, he said that there will be more violence than ever because of his speech. And that was placed in his speech, preaching to everyone that the black community will become unrest between everyone.
I can't comment on that because I'm not sure of the context of the speech. However, I believe that it wasn't his intention to incite unrest, but it was just a product of a rebellion of a resentment against the system that was together.
Agree with the prosecution's definition of seditious libel, which is violence after speech?
No.
You don't?
Wait, violence. But where does that go?
Like, speech incites violence.
Speech incites violence.
You agree
In
with-
some aspects of the world, yeah.
Would you agree with the statement that some of your protests and some of your peaceful protests ended up with violent actions as a result
Directed by me, no.
after your speech, correct?
Yes.
So, if seditious libel is violence incited by speech, then technically speaking, someone who disagreed with your speech would violently react, and that would be a cause of your seditious libel.
I would
right?
not be guilty for it, it would be their fault, therefore it's not.
So how is Malcolm any different than your statements?
Unlike Malcolm, I do not incite the direct violence, although he does. There's been proven time and time again that he was the direct cause of many violences.
Actually, it hasn't been proven because we're on trial for now, but
Okay, well, I'm dead. I'm supposedly dead too. But once you decide to bring me back to life for this trial.
Okay, fucking answer that question. That's a fucking good question, and you should be able to answer
Wait,
it.
what was the question? Ask me again.
I said, how are Malcolm's actions different than yours if yours also resulted in violence?
I was not direct cause of it. I was never the direct cause of it. It was due to variance.
So, in the definition of seditious libel, is there a fine line between whether or not you were direct cause or if your speech incited violence?
Of course, this is not 1978. This is not when the law was changed.
So they stated that if you indirectly cause violence through speech, then you're not guilty?
Say that again.
If you indirectly cause violence through speech, then you're not guilty of seditious libel, is what you're saying?
If there's a reasonable cause, of course. But I am a priest after all.
Not a priest.
Minister, sorry.
No further questions.
You called people white devils, everyone, because of their skin
15
color.
seconds.
A hypocritical thing because you were upset at what white people had done to other people, but you didn't like that.
I don't believe all white people are the devil, but growing up, obviously when you see your father be murdered by the KKK and white people, and you have to constantly move from house to house to house because of white people, and they constantly throughout your life inflict violence on your family, you're gonna have some form that some white people are like that. But I did have good white influences in my life.
But now you don't even talk to them because you think all white people are the devil.
I just said.
Have you talked to
I
Sophia
just
ever
said-
since?
No.
Have you talked to, well, you can't talk to him because
Who
he's dead
talks,
now, but
most people, do you still talk to your ex-boyfriend?
I do now, and you were there on Friday, so don't be that into them.
Why are we doing this?
Can you elaborate on the differences of your views before and after you left the Nation of Islam? So how you were before, when you were in the nation, and then afterwards when you made the pilgrimage?
Before, when I was in the nation, I did follow Elijah Muhammad, and I did believe in the separation and all of those things, and I do believe there's some form of segregation, which I did believe at the time, but after I went to the pilgrimage and I went to Africa, I believed in unifying blacks, and I believed in creating their power and excellence to realize the power they have in the world.
Can you elaborate on the views of Martin Luther King? And
He wanted peace in the world, and he wanted everyone to feel welcome, and he wanted everyone to join in one. He wanted integration.
so you'd say he wanted unification of everyone.
Yes.
And do you think unification between everyone exists to this day?
I don't think so. There's still very many forms of separation. It's very clear in the media now how whites have always had more power than others.
And you're aware of violence that has resulted by these protests, like Black Lives Matter and those types of protests?
Yes.
So, would you consider that seditious libel by Martin Luther King if his argument and what he was fighting for is still a problem today and still results in violence and the deaths of Black people? No further questions.
Your Honor, jury, everyone, now that you've heard what's been stated by both sides, you can make your own assumptions on this case. Mr. X is a man who wanted only good for the world. He wanted equality for all black people and did his best to communicate to blacks that they need to do something to obtain their rights. Mr. X had been a speaker for the Nation of Islam and spread the teachings of Mr. Muhammad. While spreading these teachings, people believed that he was promoting violence against white people, which is false. Mr. X never stated that black people should turn to violence. Many people assumed that Mr. X was spreading these ideas and changed his image from being a black civil rights advocate to someone who was full of hate for all white people. These were false assumptions that Mr. X even spoke out about, yet people still believe this of him. Yes, there have been difficulties while promoting black civil rights. However, all of these people who were working towards these rights experienced difficulties. People like Dr. King, who spoke out about peaceful protests, experienced difficulties among white people. Violence is an inevitable factor when people have very different views from one another and want change in the world. Mr. X should not be charged with sedition and in fact be seen as not guilty.
To this trial, the prosecution stands by their accusation of seditious libel towards Malcolm X. Seditious libel is speech that invokes libel is speech that invokes violence. And Malcolm did this, and he said this in a speech at Park Sheraton Hotel to a room of white news reporters on March 13th, 1964. He said, "There will be more violence than ever. This year, white people will be shocked when they discover that the passive little Negro they had known turns out to be a roaring lion. The whites had better understand this while there is still time. The Negroes at the mass level are ready to act. It is dangerous to deceive the white people into believing all is well." This shows that Malcolm X is obviously invoking violence because he clearly states that there will be more violence than ever. Through Malcolm's own speech, we can see that he is guilty of seditious libel. Therefore, to continue on, Malcolm was very defensive towards our prosecution examiner. Therefore, a defensive man should not be allowed to defend his beliefs. His beliefs could end up not only hurting himself, but also those around him. Malcolm X is guilty of seditious libel because he caused issues within both the black and white communities.
Okay. I definitely agree the defense should have won because they had a clear strategy. I could tell what they were arguing. And dude, Ryan, you should really be an attorney. Every time you got up, it was oh snap, on point. And I didn't understand until maybe the closing statement what was going on in the prosecution. I could not figure out what you were trying to argue. It just didn't have a real clear